Anglers of the internet, welcome back to another Advanced Kayak Anglers podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Smits. You know, it's fall time here in Southwest Ohio, and many of the northern states, we experience a lot of cold water conditions starting about now. And there's a lot to being safe and having fun, because that's what this is all about for us, right? We're all out there to have fun and be safe. No one wants to die doing this. And conditions can be scary, but you can mitigate your chances with some cold water safety. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We got two great guests. We have Chuck Earls and Robert Sharkey. How you guys doing?
How you doing, bud?
Good. I mean, you guys heard me talk just now, and we were talking a little bit before. I mean, the cold weather's moving in, guys. I mean, down here, we're right on the border whether you need to be wearing some extra safety equipment and stuff. And I would love to just hear your guys' thoughts and have a little roundtable discussion on some cold water safety, so we all can keep catching fish and have fun. I know I've been fishing in cold water for a very long time, basically since I started kayak fishing. And quite frankly, you know, if I would have fallen in when I first started, I would have died. Same. 100%. I was in a rain suit. You know, I had big ass boots on. You know, I would have sank right to the bottom. I mean, I had a life vest on. I wouldn't have sank, but, you know, I was not protected really from cold water immersion, you know.
I like to say we don't know what we don't know, right? You know, my first season out, I had no idea how dangerous I was being on cold water. You know, and I think what happened was I actually got froze out. Everything froze solid, you know, and ice fishing's a lot of work. So I just started doing some research, you know, preparing for that spring season. And that's when I learned about sorry about that. That's I got the notifications off now. But that's when I learned about, you know, the dry suit and the need for it, and really the true dangers. You know, so just like Robert Sharkey, I mean, fortunately, he learned.
Yeah, I sort of learned the hard way.
Yeah, when
just 2 years ago, and yeah. I like you, Kurt, was out there many times before in snow gear, big boots, rain pants, winter coat. Cotton from head to toe, you know, nothing that I was supposed to have when I was out there. And like Chuck said, I think it was 2 years ago, Thanksgiving, I was out there and I did flip. And the water was like, it was like low 30s, mid 30s. But I was over at Stony Island by the Livingston, and I was paddling, and I seen a freighter and was taking a video of the freighter, not paying attention to where I was at. And right at the top of the northern point of the Livingston, when a freighter goes by, it turns into a little vortex. This little peninsula does, and I didn't realize how close I was to it, and it sucked me in. Before I knew it, it was like a washboard, threw me over. I lost all my gear. Livingston, I don't even know how deep the water was, but I just remember like looking up, and thank God I did have a life jacket on. It was the one thing. Two things: life jacket and leash your paddle. Always leash your paddle, because that kayak is your way back home. So if you get on that kayak and it's no paddle, you ain't going anywhere. You're going with the current. But was able to look up. I seen the silhouette of the kayak. Was able to swim back up again, laid on the bottom, and was able to paddle this side of the Livingston Channel. It was a nightmare. 37 degrees freezing.
So you're lucky you got back on, honestly, because that's one of the things I tell people.
Yeah.
You know, what you know, stuff comes up quicker than you think it's going to happen. Like, you think you're going to be in total control of the situation, but when bad stuff happens, you're not in total control.
Yeah, and that day the water was glass. So it was a perfect day to be out. But you just, like you just said, you never know. You're not in control.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is, like, when you get cold, you lose a lot of your motor dexterity. So like grabbing onto something firmly with your hand becomes a problem.
Right.
Yeah, I think adrenaline was the only thing keeping me going.
And I'm glad yours turned out good because it became a learning experience. And now you are significantly safer on the water with what you do. So maybe we should kind of start this with like, when should you start wearing extra protection, and what should that extra protection be, and what shouldn't you wear?
Well, the magic number really is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of people are familiar with the 120-degree rule. Basically, you should take that, toss it in the trash because that's where it belongs. If the water temperature is 40 degrees and the air temperature is 80 degrees and you can't get out of the water, the end result is still the same. So 60 degrees really is the magic number that you want to focus on. That's not saying if you spend, a long time in maybe 65 to 70 degree water, I mean, that can still take your life as well. We lost a couple of boaters in the Eastern Basin not too long before I cast, and the water temperature was 60, I believe it was 64 degrees or 67, but they were in the water for 4.5 hours. Now the flip side, there was a guy rescued about 4 miles offshore at the Cleveland Crib, spent 11 hours clinging to a bucket, and that water temperature was 70 degrees. There's a lot of factors as well, just like Robert Sharkey's story is you have to have that will to live and survive. And, you kind of got to push through, tell yourself just one more step, one more, paddle stroke. And I mean, hopefully that's enough, if you're not prepared, but to be prepared, what you need is a dry suit. A wetsuit can work, but a wetsuit's designed to be used wet. Basically, it traps a layer of water in between the suit and your body, and then your body will warm that up. That way, when you do go in, there's nowhere for fresh water to come in, and that's how that works. The downside is they're very uncomfortable, and generally, unless you're swim testing your wetsuit before you go out, which is going to make you cold, right in the beginning, it's not really ready for that situation. So just get a good dry suit, reputable brands, Kokatat, NRS, StolaQuest, Level 6, stick with a good reputable brand. It might be a little bit more than, some of the cheap knockoff stuff on Amazon, but at the end of the day, if this thing fails, it could be your life. Underneath that, you're going to layer with a collection of different things. And really, it's just based on you as an individual. So we'll get to actually, swim testing your dry suit and making sure your underlayers are dialed in. But the important thing is, number one, no cotton. You want to use material like merino wool or polyester, nylon fleece, synthetic materials that still have that warming property, even if it gets wet. Alpaca is another good one. I just seen Jeff Little's video on those alpaca socks. Those look very interesting because cold feet is pretty much a guaranteed out there that time of year. So what you do is you have your base layer, which is just like, thermals. Make sure that there's no cotton. A lot of these cheaper ones that you get at Walmart, they will be 50% cotton. You want something, read the label, no cotton whatsoever, no exceptions. And then on top of that, you're going to have basically what's called your mid layer. And that could be, depending on the person, 1 to 3, maybe even more if you need it, additional layers before your dry suit goes over, which is your outer layer or your shell layer. And then what you're going to do is just go out, check the water temperature, check the air temperature, and go in the water in a safe location, at a beach or a boat ramp, somewhere where you can actually walk in that water. And if something goes wrong, you got a leak, or maybe you didn't dress warm enough, you're starting to get cold, you can easily get back out. And you have somebody on shore as well. So, you're not doing this alone. And then you can kind of start to dial in your underlayers like that. And really, that's why I did all my testing. Was number one, to make sure that this suit was going to actually save my life. Because, most of the time I'm out there 2 miles offshore by myself. I need to know, is this suit going to save my life? And secondly, if I do go in the water, how are my underlayers going to perform? Because dry suit's designed to keep you dry. It's not going to keep you warm, and that's really where the underlayers come in.
And a lot of convection's happening if you're in the water. If you don't have any insulation on, it's going to still be cold. You won't be wet, but you're still going to be cold in that water.
Exactly.
One thing I've always added, started adding underneath on top of my layers under my dry suit is those heat patches that hunters wear.
Yep.
I put them on my chest, both thighs, and both arms. And they're all body patches, so they're nice size. So, like, if you do fall in the water, you still are. I haven't tested in the water. I know Chuck wants me to go down and test in the water.
Yeah,
that's hard to do, man.
This is the year to do that, and that's a great addition. Having those heat patches, especially on the chest, because you're keeping your core, your core warm, and if you keep that blood flowing to your arms, your legs, around your chest, you keep that stuff warm, it's going to generally keep the rest of your body warm. Mm-hmm. I've considered the battery operated socks, only the real good ones, the ones that the skiers use, just because I can only imagine having a cheap knockoff, battery start inside the dry suit, but then again, even with the expensive ones, it's still,
you're running a chance with that because there's something mechanical or energy oriented.
Exactly. And some people do use those battery operated clothing underneath. Just be cautious, know what risks you are taking if you do something like that, and maybe have a backup plan, like a fire extinguisher. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to jump into cold water, right?
You need a bilge pump and a fire extinguisher every time you go out.
Right.
So something you said was like testing your gear, and I've been doing this I've been doing cold water a long time, and quite frankly, like I said before, I was not being safe with it at all. When I first started, if I would have fallen in the water when I first started doing this, I totally would have been dead. Rain suit doesn't cut it. Boots doesn't cut it. You see some people, and I was one of them who started wearing waders with just a rain jacket up top, and I thought that was pretty safe, until I actually jumped in the water one time when it was warm out. It was actually fairly warm out, but I wanted to see how much water got in, and not a ton of water got in, but if that water would have been super cold, it would have been a huge deal. I mean, it wasn't like I got drenched, but like the upper half of my body, right where you want to be warm and dry, the driest around your core, got very wet. And then I got a dry top for it, and use that with waders and tried that out. And that mostly worked too. But I think what you said is anyone who isn't like getting the full dry suit and they're using a 2-piece semi-dry suit or even a 2-piece dry suit, you should really test that out when the water's warm. You should really go for a swim, because what happens when you fall off your kayak? More than likely that kayak's going to move away from you.
Yep.
Right? You're going to end up like trying to hang on to it in some way, and it's going to end up moving away from you, especially if you're in any current. Like where I'm at, I fish the Ohio River a lot. There's not a ton of current in there, but it's 3-4 miles an hour in the wintertime, maybe more. You fall off, you're stationary, and that kayak is going 3-4 miles an hour away from you. That's a big deal. Footwear.
Yep.
I see a lot of people putting on wading boots for their footwear in the wintertime. And that's kind of like a big no-no, at least in my book, because they're so heavy.
I will agree to disagree on that part. I will say that as long as you can get out there and test and successfully re-enter with those kind of boots, then go ahead. But I mean, go out there and test. And even with a dry suit, you
need to swim. That's the deal. You got to be able to swim with whatever you're wearing.
Number one, you need to be able to swim, and number two, you need to be able to make sure that you can actually get in your dry suit, because now it's not a factor of, hey, I can swim to shore. Well, in cold water, you can swim maybe 10 yards, 20 yards,
very far.
depending, so do those couple of things. And I've tested with different things. I do have the NRS boundary boots when it is cold. I'm in heavy duty winter hunting boots because they keep my feet warmer.
Yeah, I'm in the mucks. I'm in the mucks during the winter. Like I'm in the boundary boots like right now, or if I'm in my touring kayaks, the boundary boots are smaller than my mucks. I can't get my feet inside there. But then you also got to think, your mucks you can kick off if you have, because they slide right off. You're still in booties.
But the one thing you want to realize with that, because I have worn mucks before I went to the winter boots, because the mucks, there's a little bit more space. So if you're layering, 3-4 layers of socks, you can fit them in there. But there have been a couple of times where if you don't have as much thickness there to hold that muck boot on, it could pop off halfway, and now you're trying to kick your feet or kick the boot off, and it has kind of interfered in that way.
Good point.
So, whatever you use, just make sure it's tight. I don't really, personally, I don't feel the extra added weight for some of these other boots, like even muck boots. A little bit of water in there is not going to stop you. But again, first and foremost, if you're going to go out in cold water, don't go out there without testing. Test for your family. It's not about us. It's about the people that love us and depend on us, and the people that would, live without a piece.
You want to come back to your family. I mean, that's the thing.
Definitely.
I'll tell you, one of the things I found that works absolutely the best for cold weather, and this may not be everyone's cup of tea, is wearing Crocs in the wintertime with my dry suit. Now, let me paraphrase this. I wear like a 9 shoe, but I buy a 13 or a 14 Croc, and I can put on as many socks as I want and have my feet be incredibly comfortable in there, where I haven't found any other boots. And I'm speaking of probably like more severe conditions, right? I'm talking like less than 20-degree air temperatures,
right?
Really cold stuff. I can keep my feet incredibly warm because there's a lot of room in there for me to have those socks on. Because you don't want to constrict your foot either. That's what some people don't understand, is they'll be like, well, I'll just put 2 pairs of socks on. I'm like, well, you have to have room, because now just a little bit of pressure on your foot just shuts down the circulation. And that's what keeps your foot warm in the wintertime, is having circulation. And on a kayak, we're not really moving our feet a whole lot. It's not like walking where your foot's pumping. It's also, and there's more than one. And what I'm trying to say here is there's more than one way to skin a cat on keeping warm and being safe at the same time. And going back to, like we've been saying, try everything out for yourself, but do it in a safe way first before you go diving into a situation where it may cost you something.
That's a new one, the Crocs. Never heard that.
Yeah, it hasn't caught on with a lot of people, man. I see a lot of people like, why are you wearing Crocs in the wintertime? And I'm like, well, they're 13s, they're 14s, they're 4 or 5 sizes bigger than I normally wear.
Yeah.
I wear 2, I put 2 big giant socks on, and I got one sock that fits my foot just fine, and then I got this other super thick sock that again is for like a 13 or a 14 that fits over that sock. Yeah, so everything is just like, it feels weird I'm walking because there's like so much sock pushing underneath my foot when I'm walking around
on a sponge.
Yeah. And for me, not having any weight on my feet, it's super easy to swim with them. When I tried it out, it was super easy swimming with them. And if you got to kick them off, it's just Velcro on the back. I haven't really tried that because I never felt the need to have to kick them off. They weren't in the way or anything, But there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat here,
Yeah, like you said, you do oversize your shoes. Always oversize your shoes. You oversize everything pretty much. From your suit to your, suit and shoes, definitely. Everything underneath is pretty much normal size. Just and layer up, like Chuck said. And
so, do you guys ever put anything on the outside of your, like if you go out when it's maybe super cold on the outside of your dry suits?
Yeah, I I always bring my rain gear, and it's not necessarily for rain. It is a great windbreak, and on those cold days, like you said, sub 20s, when you're offshore and it's 15, 20 degrees outside, and that wind starts blowing over that cold water, it's cold. You almost want to jump in the water to get warm. I mean, don't, but jokingly,
The water's warmer than the air.
right?
Same way, raincoat.
I'll put my rain gear, my bibs, and my rain jacket on just to break that wind. And then, if I start feeling a little warm, I can pop that off. Or if it's a long day, you go out and I mean, you're dealing with 20 to 30 degree temperature changes from, the time you launch till the time that you head back to shore. So,
Sorry.
No problem. That's why you want to dress in layers. And I meant to I didn't want to interrupt you when you're talking about it, but that's one of the reasons to dress in layers is because a lot of times in the dry suit season, you have those big temperature swings. Because like right now in Cincinnati, we'll wake up and it'll be sub 40 degrees and then it'll be 80 degrees in the afternoon. So it's just a huge swing in temperature.
right.
And it stays like that for months, right? Sometimes all winter, if we have a warmer winter, it'll be sub freezing in the morning and then it'll be 50 degrees in the afternoon. So just massive swing. So and that's how you manage that, right? You can take off one or two garments and be able to keep a little cooler as the day warms up, or keep comfortable. I don't want to say cooler, but keep comfortable.
Yeah, that's already happened to me this season. I've already been out in both the Kokatat and my NRSR pants and jacket, and had to take layers off. Like you said, in the morning it's like 40, afternoon it's like 70. It's
and it gets hot in those dry suits, man.
Right now it's hard to judge what like I want to go out this Thursday, but it's going to be colder in the afternoon, so I don't know how to do it.
That works great when you have a spot to like get out of the water.
Yeah.
But when you're offshore, on big water, a mile or two offshore, you're kind of in a situation where do I open up the dry suits, take a layer off? That opens you up to a lot of dangers.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't.
That's really why it's so important to at least test that in the water, get your underlayers dialed in, and get used to being uncomfortable at times. There are going to be some times where you're a little bit warm or a little bit cold and you got to grab that, the rain jacket or whatever you have just to add an extra layer on top. But there's things that you can do, like putting your hands in the water or even dipping your legs in the water. You have your dry suit on, you can take your boots off or whatever, dip your legs in the water, or just take some of that water and put it on your head. You're bringing that temperature down without affecting your underlayers and putting you in that dangerous situation. Also having, some cold water, some ice water to drink, that's going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable out there. Because, you don't really want to take your life jacket off and then try to get out of your dry suit to remove a top layer, let alone a bottom layer,
Well, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's something I hadn't thought of. Because where I'm fishing, I just go to land and do it. Right? It's no big deal. I can take everything off, and I'm standing on ground. There's zero chance of me falling in. Where being on the big water, man, let's be real. As soon as the water temp's down at all, you really should never take your life jacket off. And you should probably never open your dry suit for any reason out there, because, man, you're like you said, 2 miles away from shore. That's a big deal, man.
Yeah, it is. I'm the same way. I'm near land, so I can get off. I can't deal with Chuck. Chuck is in a totally different situation when he's out there than what we are.
Yeah. It's easy for us because we just. Oh man, if I have to go to the bathroom, man,
that's another thing right there.
Right.
I'll just go over, rip everything off, man, do what I got to do, man.
One thing I want to add to that real
on
quick.
with my day, Chuck. You got to hold it in for the whole time, man.
No, I'm sure you'll figure something out.
There are situations where you do have to take that risk, and that's that's basically the only one. When you do have to relieve yourself. but you still have your life jacket on. You're still doing it safely. And
But let's talk about that for a second, though, man.
And that suit.
Let's talk about
well,
relieving ourselves on the water real quick.
Yeah,
because NRS and some other brands, I don't know all the other brands that have it, have a relief zipper.
Yes.
Right.
So you don't have to like unzip from your shoulder down to your waist and be completely open and exposed with half your dry suit off. You can just open a part of your dry suit, do what you got to do. For me, that was a game changer in the wintertime for me, and I will never go back to not having that now.
No, you definitely need that. And one thing with those zippers, you need to wax those zippers, because the first couple of times that I went out and I did have to relieve myself, that zipper was no joke. This thing could not open up fast enough.
And the wax also helps with keeping them waterproof as they age too.
Right.
So something to bring up. Yeah.
If you can't get back to shore, like in my situation, if I'm going back to shore, that's it for the day.
Yeah. Well, it's 2 miles in, man. It's a long haul back, It's
right. Even with the Torpedo, that's a 20-minute run in and a 20-minute run back, and the battery capacity to do that.
Yeah.
I've thought about that many times. If I'm standing there and a wave hits me or something like that, and I do fall in with my relief zippers open, which I have unintentionally experienced that. The first time I tested my dry suit, I didn't make sure my relief zipper was all the way closed. I walked in from the beach, and got out as fast as I could. And my daughter's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Nothing." I got to make it adjustment. But as quickly as I can get back into kayak, I would get a little bit wet, but it really wouldn't be enough to affect anything. Again, going back to the underlayers that still have insulating properties, even with a little bit of sweat or a little leak or something like that, because you could easily snag a hook on the way out.
Yep.
And speaking of that, Aqua Seal UV, always carry a tube of that. With the UV, if you do snag a hook or something, you can patch that on the spot. It's going to instantly cure. I snagged my suit third trip out years ago and made that repair, and it's probably still the most solid spot on the dry suit.
I did the same thing, but it didn't go all the way through. It just grabbed some fibers, but I still put some, put the patch on.
It doesn't take much to compromise it, I mean, just a little, it's a little nick.
Yeah. Even your latex seals, you want to make sure that you're not using your fingernails. You want to use, the tips of where your fingerprints are, and roll that seal up while you get your fingers under. That way you can pull it off. And also treat those once or twice a year. I think Kokatat recommends twice a year with the 303 aerospace protectant, the rubber. Just work it into the rubber. Personally, I like to see what the limitations of things are. So I did use zipper lube over the years, but I didn't use 303. And I think my wrist gaskets lasted about 5.5 seasons before they started cracking and splitting. And then I had to replace it, which $60, a little bit of time, a little bit of Aqua Seal. I did it on my kitchen table. No big deal.
Oh, so those are replaceable. You can do those yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. I do treat them with that 303, and that also makes it easier to slide them in. That's another thing that could be a pain in the butt, is getting your hands through those seals. But after treating them, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, especially the first time that you're wearing it for the season, because latex is kind of contracted on there. So you will, you're going to lose some blood flow to your fingers. Your fingers are going to feel kind of cold and stuff.
Yeah.
Throughout the season, it will stretch out a little bit. The treatment, I don't know if it'll make it really, less tight like that.
I think my hand just slid through easier. I don't know, maybe it was just lubed up or something.
It up a little bit, yeah.
One thing I have done is I'll take the hand warmers, and I will put it in between the latex and the dry suit cuff that goes over my gloves.
And when
right on the front, that way I'm just warming my, the blood flow into the fingers. And I'll also use just a regular pair of winter hunting gloves, which you got to make sure that you keep them dry. I haven't really found a perfect solution in the glove department yet.
I carry multiples.
Yeah,
I
No,
do.
that's the only
Very
thing I
multiple.
found that is
Switch them
helpful.
out.
yeah, but you take those thick gloves, you know, and you put a set of hand warmers in it and put it somewhere dry.
Yeah.
If you don't have a dry compartment, put it in a dry bag or a dry box or something like that. That way, once you're done dealing with the fish and your fingers are froze to the bone, you grab those gloves, you stick them in there. They're nice and warm. They're going to warm you up, and you're ready to fish, you know, in a couple of minutes. Versus trying to like warm the gloves up. And
I got some latex ones I wear sometimes too.
yeah,
but those they're hard. I mean, they're hard to get on and off. You know, when you're trying to unhook a fish or just fight, you know, do what you got. Reel. They're sort of bulky.
I don't take my latex gloves off when I'm fighting a fish or anything. I just leave them on.
Yeah.
The latex does actually make a huge difference. I get the ones from Harbor Freight. They're
I meant neoprene. Did I say latex?
Oh yeah.
I meant neoprene.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the like the neoprene NRS gloves and the
something like that. But mine's like a knockoff. They're not like the NRS brand, but they are neoprene.
I'll be honest with you guys, man. I just like super cheap fingerless fleece gloves, and I'll take 6 pairs with me.
Yeah, I got the ones
where they get wet, and then I just put a dry one on, and I just do that all day long. Now my car stinks on the way home. I ain't gonna lie. It smells like wet gloves, you know. I mean, because they get wet, but
you know, I mean, for me, like, and everybody's different, right? My fingers stop working when they start getting numb and cold. So having that instant heat source with those gloves and the hand warmers in there is huge for me. And then I do wear latex, like medical gloves. You get them from Harbor Freight. They make different ranges. I think mine are mid range, so they're actually durable. You could go a little bit thicker as well, but that's going to give you a barrier away from, you know, the water, and you can still actually function and unhook fish. And
so your hand's dry essentially. Even though there's water like on the glove, your hand itself stays dry.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Not really. It's not really insulating, is it?
No. Then you ever try to put your hand back in a glove when it's wet?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like a dry suit or a wetsuit.
Yeah.
You know, the latex gloves. You know, just not as thick. So it does provide a little bit of insulation, and just a little bit of a barrier.
Right. Just more about keeping your hand completely dry from the cold water.
Yeah. I got that from the hardcore steelhead anglers that are wading the river. You know, when everything's frozen and nobody else is out.
Yeah, I got a couple buddies that swear by them. I'm such a feel guy for like everything I do, man. My fingertips have to be free. I've tried neoprene full gloves, and those work pretty good as long as they stay dry. And you know, but man, I just couldn't feel stuff. Now I suffer. I just suffer. My fingertips are cold, but I can still kind of feel things. You know.
I used to be
everyone's different, right? You know, we just got to find the best way you can to be comfortable and safe on the water. You know,
multiple.
I used to be just like that, you know, where I did not like having those latex gloves. And then we went out a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year, might have been last winter, in a blizzard, and it was cold. My hands were froze all day, and they were numb actually for the following week. So I could feel my fingertips for the next week. And you know, I realized like obviously the dangers of frostbite out there, you know, and what impact it is. And it's just, I don't know, the gloves, they just make a huge difference. You know, I stopped being bullheaded and not wearing them, and you know, wanting to feel it's like 20 times I'm going to be out here. I can't lose a finger.
And some kind of face covering.
Yeah,
definitely. You brought up about frostbite, especially being in Lake Erie. Have some kind of cover your cheeks, your nose, cover that up. You know, that's
I have 2 different ones. I have the neoprene baklava, and then I have actually a face mask that goes over. And then of course I always have my my trapper hat, my fuzzy trapper hat. Those things are huge out there.
Yeah, I always think about those trapper. Getting one of those. They just look warm. Just that hat, you know, they look comfortable.
I love that thing.
Cover your ears.
You put a beanie underneath it, and that you know, and you're warm. The only time is like when you're going into the wind, then
Yeah.
I'll actually take that face mask and I'll put it over, and you know, I'm perfect.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you, one of the things I found is I went to a camping store around here, and it has this stuff called from RAB. I think that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. But they have this really nice neck gaiter that's real thick, so I'll put that on over my dry suit, and it's designed to pull up to your nose like this. So it's like, man, it's sweet for those days where it's like super cold. You need that extra warmth around your neck, and then it's long enough and it stays buried in my jacket when I pull it up. You know, because it's thicker than like the way thicker than the buffs we wear. It's like a fleece, you know, like a stretchy fleece. So you can bring it up, and I bring it up around my head, and of course, you know, I've got my own hat system where I have like multiple hats. Right, I put like a skull hat on. I start with that, and as it gets colder, I have a warmer hat that goes over that I can pull way down. And it gets colder than that, I got a thicker one that I can pull down. Then I got one that fits over all of them, so I look like a giant Martian, you know, out there with a big head. You know, so it's, what do you guys do? I mean, obviously you said you did the trapper hat. Rob, what do you do? Or Robert, what do you do for your hats, man?
I'm just pretty much like you just said, like the skull cap, multiple hats, face covering. Sort of, I mean, glasses is like a hindering because my nose has to be open for breathing because it comes. Oh, like if you had that, you know, if I put that over my face,
fogs up,
and they freeze up. It ain't like you can't wipe them off. You know, you just got to deal with it for a minute. But just multiple hats, you know, it's my head really doesn't get all that cold. I probably even like my rain jacket that I would put on for the windbreaker has a hood on it, and that's a big saver right there on top of the other two hats. The other two hats they're pretty much just knit that I put on.
And some of the upper end dry suits do come with hoods as well.
Mine has a hood on it. My NRS has a hood on it that I like because I'm out. A lot of times, you know, down here it'll be like we'll get this freezing rain situations that come and go, and you know, man, when I have time to fish, I want to fish. So even if it's nasty conditions, I need to get out there. So it just allowed me not to have to bring also my rain jacket to have that hood. But it does add some warm. Honestly, I find myself using it more instead of for rain just to keep warm.
Yeah.
On a really cold morning, you know, I'll have all my hats on, and I'll have that on, and I'll have it pulled down kind of tight because it has that. It's like almost like a face mask attachment, so you can really keep dry with it.
Oh yeah.
And it just, man, it you know, it really does do a lot, even though it's really thin, holding that heat in. And again, for me, it goes back to the layering, man. I wear like at least two hats normally, unless it's not very cold. But as it gets colder, it's just more and more layers. It's not like I take them off and I replace them with one big thick layer. It's just more and more layers, so I can strip down a little bit.
I'm definitely going to do that cuff thing between the.
Between
the latex and the Velcro in between there.
And you can just tighten your, you know, the wrist strap down.
Yeah, that's a great idea right there.
That's juice, dude. That really does keep your hands warm because those veins, man, they're like right there. You're getting warming up your blood.
Another trick if you have cold feet, or your feet sweat a lot.
Yeah.
You just take go buy a separate thing of deodorant and put a little bit of deodorant on the bottom of your feet. It'll keep it from sweating a lot, and keep them generally a lot warmer because you don't have all that moisture inside.
Yeah, talking about like your feet sweating, like your boundary boots, and my muck boots don't smell that bad because they're on top of my dry suit and stuff. But my boundary boots, and off and on I put them in my muck boots, but I use what is that, Dr. Scholl's?
Oh yeah,
I put them in socks and footies, and I just tie the end up and I throw them in there. Plus it draws the moisture out and makes them smell better on top of that.
Especially
neoprene don't smell good anyway, period.
Those boundary boots, I feel like they take a week to dry out.
Yeah, throw some of those in there, dude. It really helps, you know. Or
Here's
those boot dryers.
Here's a great tip. So for many years, I kept my dry suit in my car, especially when I was car top, and I didn't want to forget it. You know, I didn't have the systems in place to remember all the gear, and I just kept it in there because then it would there. So a couple of years ago, I started bringing it into the house, so it would actually be warm enough, you know, room temperature, as well as my boots. And that way, when I transferred it into the cab of my truck, it's still in that warm environment. So go out there, get the kayak ready, and maybe I'm a little bit chilly. I'm definitely not, layered up like I'm ready to go on the water.
Yeah.
And then when I put that dry suit on, now I'm not putting on a dry suit that's been sitting in 30-degree temperatures, and I'm not putting on boots that are 30-degree temperatures,
That's a great tip right there.
just little things like that make a huge difference. Because, like you said, man, if you have the opportunity to fish, why not? Because oceans, if you can prepare and do it comfortably and safely, like get out there and, live your best life.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
So, for me, I probably go more often than I should by myself in conditions that are probably a little too cold. But, obviously I'm wearing a dry suit or a semi-dry suit. I think mine's officially quantified as a semi-dry suit.
Because it has that
It's two-piece
neck gasket versus the latex neck gasket, which mine's a semi as well. I've tested it in crazy conditions. I know it's going to save my life. It's going to do what I need to do. I look at it like this: if it's too uncomfortable to wear, are you going to wear it? And those wrist gaskets are so tight, I can't even imagine having latex strangling me for 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours on the water.
Well, and that's the nice thing about the neck gaskets too, that you can adjust, is that
with
you can get it just right? So it seals up, but you're not strangled and it's not loose. I feel like it's actually safer. The downside is most people, when I see wear them, they leave their neck gasket completely.
Yeah, they don't cinch it down.
Because they're getting hot, so they'll open it. I'm like, man, if you fall in, you're not going to be able to close that. It's going to be a total pandemonium.
It's one of those things, just like any hatch on a kayak. It's watertight.
If you close it,
you still will get like a little bit of a trickle down the back of your neck, and all it's going to do is wake you up. I mean, it's not enough to do anything other than, oh, that was cold, and really it comes down to how tight you want that, and what you're doing in the water. If you fall in and you jump back in your kayak real quick because you've done it a million times, you have that muscle memory, it's no big deal. But if you're being you're swimming around in icy water, and then you lean your head back and you realize, oh, I just kind of stuck that seal under the water. Maybe it wasn't as tight as I thought it was, and now I got a little bit of water down the back of my neck. Maybe
This is why you wear synthetic stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, because it just wakes you up.
Me personally, I think it's a really good idea to bring a dry bag full of a change of your thermal clothing. You don't need to bring another dry suit in there, but you really should bring. It doesn't have to be a bunch of layers either, man. This, it's emergency, right?
Just some dry clothes, and also a few different forms of ways to start a fire.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially for you guys, because if something happens, or even if you come across somebody that doesn't know any better at the time, are we going to call them stupid, or are we going to grab them and save their life? Like, they don't deserve to die. We were stupid once too, right?
Yeah.
But having that way to start the fire, and like Jeff Little even carries a piece of cardboard. That way he can wave, he could fan the fire to get it going if it's all icy, or he could even use it as like a windbreak until the fire starts getting going.
Yeah, I definitely keep a lighter on me now. You're talking about hatches on your kayak. That's one thing. Water getting in your suit, but that day that I flipped, I did have a hatch open on my kayak. I opened it up to pull a little rag out to clean my GoPro off, and never put the cap back on. When I flipped, there was probably 5 gallons of water inside my kayak when I was trying to paddle against like 100 yards against the current to get out of the Livingston Channel. So every paddle was a fight for stability.
Yeah.
It was compounding the whole situation, right? I mean, just making it all that much worse.
Now I was able to get to shore once I got around back into the bay. You fished that bay. And was able to stand the kayak up and get the water out of it.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, I carry a bilge on both my kayaks now. I never did on the ones that had seals on them. Never thought about it. A sit in, yes, because you're sitting in a big hole, that can just fill up instantly. But this situations like that, I could have, when I was on the side of the Livingston, pumped it out before I started paddling. So I keep them on.
Bilge is a great idea, right? Because if you flip, and maybe you were grabbing a snack and you didn't get that hatch completely closed, like on a Hobie, you got to use bungees, right? Maybe you only put one bungee on, so you're still getting water in. A bilge would be. That's not something that I carry on mine, but you know what? I think I'm gonna order one from Fishing Online, just because of that, right? Just because you said that right now.
Cheap and can help.
They're small.
There's a saying: 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right?
Yep.
So don't just get a bilge. They have those kayak sponges also.
Well, I keep a sponge in my kayak because I do get a little water in there, and it's nice to get it out. But man, having that pump could be that really could be a lifesaver for someone. And I do go by myself,
especially if you don't realize that maybe the seal's starting to wear. It's maybe torn. It's got a bad spot in it. You get caught in some rougher conditions, and you find yourself in a situation where you're hoping you don't flip over or get tossed in the water because you can't pump it out.
I had a few people when I did that fundraiser to the Lake Erie Lighthouse. You brought up the
kayak or whatever
sponge, bringing like a car sponge.
Yep.
And a couple people, once you commented on that and brought that up, they didn't have bilge pumps, but everybody can, get a sponge real quick.
They're $2.
Yeah, they were all, they all had them in their sit-ons or a towel, anything to wring some water out. Yep. You have it immediately.
So what are we missing, guys? We've kind of gone over a lot of the safety stuff, man. What are we missing about the wintertime safety precautions you can take?
Well, if you're on any kind of river system or Lake Erie, once you start getting some big ice sheets on the water, it's probably best to stay off of them for a couple of reasons. On the river, you might find yourself, you look up and here comes this big ice sheet that's coming down the river, getting ready to take you out or at least blocking you from your return point. But the same thing can happen on Lake Erie. How many times every year do people have to get rescued out there because they're ice fishing, and the wind changes and it blows that ice sheet away. Same thing can happen for boats. If that ice sheet gets blown in front of your harbor entrance or your boat ramp, you're not really going to climb over it. And kayaks don't really have the ability to go 10 miles around an ice sheet to get back to another launch point. So just something to think about. And then another thing that Jeff Little brought up was add waves to it. It starts to kick up a little bit, and now you have, chunks of ice the size of cars that could potentially hit you conscious.
Yeah. Definitely watch wind conditions before you go out, where they're coming from, how strong they're going to. It might start out calm in the morning, but they normally pick up in the afternoon. So,
exactly.
Weather apps
watch it
very important.
Yes.
Well, so what do you guys do for weather apps?
Happened to me before. Like that beach I launched on it that you launched that day. It was a winter. Some ice broke up further up the winter. I was over at Stony, came back, couldn't get an ice sheet was covering the beach. Had to go around and find like some guy's boat dock, that I could actually get in on.
Right. And that situation, at the end of the day, if it is private property, safety comes first. I don't think anybody's gonna, harass you because you had to get out of the water here to save your life.
Right. Absolutely.
At the end of the day, get off the water, get to safety. And
I'm sure they were watching us launch anyway and thinking, like, what this freaking idiots.
Like, thank God he's back.
Something's gonna happen out there.
So what weather apps do you guys use to kind of keep track of like the wind? I know I use like Windy and WeatherBug, and those are like my main ones.
Yeah, WeatherBug, or just AccuWeather. Anything on my phone I can look at real quick that will give me hour to hour.
Right. I like AccuWeather. I do verify it with the other apps as well. Because nothing in this life is perfect, right?
Right.
I will say you kind of got to take wave height with a grain of salt most of the time. Anybody that's been out there long enough, you can look at the wind direction and the what's it called? The trend,
Oh.
over time, and get a good idea of what the waves are going to be. The other one that I really like is oh my goodness, what is it called? You just mentioned it. Yeah, I use that one for the lightning feature. It's got that lightning tracker. If there's any storms or anything in the area, I can use that. And then I use AccuWeather as my radar tool. It's most important to keep your head on a swivel out there. If you see any cloud that just looks out of place, pull open your apps. Something's changed. The forecast is the forecast until you get on the water. And then once you're on the water, it's your job to kind of be the weatherman,
Yeah, then it's reality.
To the changes, if the wind direction changes or you feel the temperature drop, or, you look up and you're like, wow, that cloud really doesn't look like the rest. Pull open those apps and see what's going on. Watch the radar, and with Windfinder, like, you can get the super forecast, which is hour by hour. And then same with AccuWeather, you can watch that radar and really get dialed in as like, what actually is the danger? Am I in the way? And when is it coming approximately? And it's fairly accurate. And then before, they pull them in the wintertime, but most of the year I also use the Lake Erie live weather buoys, which that gives you, every 10 minutes you have real-time data, what's going on. So.
Gotcha. You definitely got to be ahead of it when you're out there in Lake Erie, because you're, like you said, 2 miles out. If you see that cloud a mile out,
right,
cut your half in time to get back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, guys, man, we're running about 50 minutes here, and I want to give you guys a chance to thank your sponsors and your family or friends or whoever makes fishing easier and better for you guys. Chuck, you want to start?
Sure. First of all, just want to thank you for bringing me on the podcast. And thanks, Robert, for joining us. It's great to see you, brother. It's been great watching you learn over the years, and get that stuff dialed in. And it's really cool. Just keep up the good work. And other than that, I wouldn't be here without the people that constantly support me along the way, and the companies that always have my back, like Amped Outdoors, Lithium Batteries, Torquedo, Yak Attack, Fish USA, Luge, Strike King, Native Watercraft, Boondocks, and too many individuals to name. I really appreciate you guys always having my back and allowing me to continue pushing this mission forward and keeping people safe on the water. So.
Well, brother, since you've hit the scene, you've been like a great inspiration for safety and spreading the knowledge, like real knowledge, and not just some like backroom voodoo stuff to keep warm on the water and stuff. So I appreciate everything you've been doing.
Appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Robert?
All right. Well, I don't have no sponsors. But I'd like to thank Kurt for having me on here. Chuck, nice seeing you again. And I'd like to thank Chuck, because most of the things that I've learned throughout the years is from watching him, calling him, what to do in this situation, what do I need? And it's just grown, that friendship has grown from there. And other than that, just my family, friends, for actually gritting their teeth every time I go out this time of year, putting up for me going out as much as I go out and coming back in. And, but that's pretty much it, and just thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you know what? I remember the day that you went in.
Yeah.
As soon as you got to shore, and you got warmed up in your dad's truck, I think, you called me.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I will never forget that day, because you called me and you're like, Chuck. And I'm like, hey, what's going on, bro? And you're like, I just went in the water, almost lost my life. And I remember being so thankful that you did make it back, and you were, conscious enough to be like, nope, no more risking. I need a dry suit. I need to get this stuff dialed in.
Yeah, that day when I flipped, after thinking, giving all my family and friends a hug and telling them I love them and stuff like that, and got home warmed up. You were the first person I called about the suit and explained everything that happened. And that was a terrifying day. And I can still just remember, even today, it still shakes me up. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But just like looking up and seeing the silhouette of that kayak, I mean, that's the Livingston is roughly 30 feet-ish. I don't know how deep down I was at that point. Seeing my knit hat, the only thing keep my head warm, floating away. They're the two items I seen. And then swimming up, and the kayak was upside down, so I was able to get on the bottom. And my paddle least was able to paddle to the shore. And that's when I flipped it. Well, actually not shore, but like some of the rocks that line the Livingston, and then flip it back over. And no cell, cell signal, cell service. That's another safe. That's something we need to also touch base on.
And also,
I have Metro, and it is terrible when I get closer to the Canadian waters. It's just
yeah. And I want you to mention the impact that your winter clothes had that day as well.
I had that goes back to layers. It was sweatpants. It was t-shirts. It was winter snow pants. I don't think I had. Maybe I did. They were these rubber pants that were made for more like working in a farm. So your feet could go out the bottom, but they had suspenders. Tons of layers on top of me, and that life jacket. And the life jacket saved my life. That was the one thing that saved. And I'm roughly. I know you said I was skinny earlier, Kurt, but I'm roughly like 190. Sometimes I can climb a little bit past that, but I guarantee you I was close to like 230, 240 trying to pull myself out of that water. And it was nothing that dried quickly. It was just my adrenaline that was keeping me going. Everything was just
and all that cotton just holds the water too. Even once you get out of the water, it just holds it.
Yeah. But two-way radios, or another way is to signal in is something. I mean, I have Metro like walkie-talkies in a way. If I come out with other people, we'll share, because just out of sight, out of mind for 2 seconds, something could happen. If he's in the water, that radio is still on his vest, and he can still call me. They're waterproof radios. But Chuck also, I believe, keeps some way of ship to shore, land, some kind of another way of communication.
Let's talk about that for a second, man. I forgot all about bringing this up.
Yes. To be honest, if we really touched everything, it'd be 4 or 5 hours long, right?
Man.
Right.
But that's why we try to give you the meat and potatoes as fast as we can. The VHF radio is a very important thing. One thing before we get into radios, especially on the river systems, radios work off a line of sight.
Right.
So depending on how many S curves are in the window, you might not have to be that far away for your communication to be gone. Even with, my expensive VHF radios, there may be a solution on the market, but I haven't found it yet. And really, I just haven't looked for it because I'm offshore. I don't really use them on the river. But that VHF radio will work when your phone doesn't, as long as you're within, say, 1 to 2 miles of range from another vessel, or maybe a little bit longer with the Coast Guard, because they have those tall radio towers. But that's going to get you help,
right?
As long as it can get to it. And then on top of that, I carry a personal locator beacon, which is about half the cost of the dry suit. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what's your life worth, right?
Right.
With a personal locator beacon, if my phone can't work, if the VHF radio is not getting the Coast Guard, I can pop that up. It's going to send my signal to the satellites automatically down to the rescuing authorities. And, within 5 to 6 minutes, they're trying to get a hold of me because my distress signal is going off. They have my GPS location. If I don't answer, they're calling my emergency contact and, waiting for orders. Hey, have you talked to him? What do you think? We should go out and look for him, or do you think he just got busy and his phone died or whatever? At the end of the day, that's going to get you saved when nobody knows where you're at.
Right.
And that starts with leaving a float plan. Just tell people where you're going.
Absolutely.
You can tell your loved ones, or even put it on the U.S. Coast Guard website. That way they know where to start, because you know it doesn't matter how much experience we have, things happen.
That's good practice any time of the year.
Talking about the U.S. Coast Guard, though, you can also go like on their website though and get a if found sticker.
Oh yeah,
You can put inside your kayak and with your name, number, a secondary number, because sometimes if you just get away from your kayak and you're fine, and they find your kayak and they're still going to do a search and rescue, which costs thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, when they can just make a phone call and say, no, Chuck's home, or Kurt's home. He had an incident, but he lost his kayak, and
Floated away.
That could be the end of that.
or the river blew out and it ripped it off the shoreline.
Yep, and that can save the Coast Guard a mint.
Yeah. All these are great ideas, man. I really think people are going to get a lot out of this that listen to this. Every year for the last 15 years, I've talked about water safety, and my knowledge has grown, and it's grown some tonight, man. I'm going to buy a bilge pump for my kayak. That's another really good addition to just have in there for the oh shit moments. Let's say,
peace of mind.
Yeah, peace of mind, just to keep people safe. So, guys, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and stuff. Appreciate you guys, and
Anytime.
We'll see you. Hope everybody listening. We'll see you guys next week.
See you on the water.
See you guys.